Well, it's Sunday here in Western Pennsylvania, and I'm in the shop. I thought I'd give an update about the bikes and answer a couple questions and how my shop's coming along. I've been doing different things today. We're waiting for Lowe's to bring our new refrigerator, so I have to hang around for a while for that. I wanted to go get some stuff, but I gotta wait. And I'm really getting the shop coming along. I'm getting it where all the tools I use are going to be right here. I'll show that. And then you'll notice this. I've wanted a little milling machine, and I looked at them and the prices and that. Well, I found a fella on Craigslist, and he's about 35 miles from here. I called him, and he said it was a family member's. It wasn't his, but he was selling it for him, and he said he didn't use it that much. And it's a Clutch. That's the name of the company that makes it, or the product. Klutch. And mini milling machine. It's a lot comparable to the one like Harbor Freight has, Jet. They all are just maybe a little different, a different color. I think it's the same manufacturer making all of these. I got it. I wouldn't have had to do anything to it really, but you know me, I'm going to clean it, re-grease it. The grease was getting kind of dry. He said it had been sitting at his place for a while, so I went over, and there was a man and his son there, and the son actually picked it up and put it in the car. This thing weighs like 100 and just under 150 pounds, so it's heavy. And it fit in the back of my car because when I contacted him, he wanted you to leave a number, and he called me, and I had asked him if it fit in the trunk of the car, and he said, probably, you know, you could lay it on its side and that, so that's what we did. And I have this part down here at the bottom tore apart. I completely cleaned it. I'm in the process of putting it back together, setting the gibs. A lot of the nuts on the stuff was loose. The gibs weren't dialed in enough for me. It had a little play in it. I take it out because, like on the lathe, you're a lot of in and out and back and forth. Well, this one you are too, but that one I could have a little play. This one I want more precise. I want it, when I turn it, I want to feel just a little bit of drag on it, like, you know, in the gibs, where it's going to be more precise. And I got a clamping set ordered. And with this, he had two of the tools. You take the top part off to change the, if you want to pull this drill bit part out and put collets in or anything like that. He gave me a big tool. This came with it. It went with the milling machine. It's what was originally for it. This spanner up here, and then this wrench for in the back. Because you can loosen and tilt the whole machine 45 degrees left or right, and that's what I really like. They call it a 2-speed, but then you put it in low and you turn this up, it's like a rheostat. It'll go from slow up to so far, then you can turn it off, put it in high gear, and go from there on up. You have a rheostat that controls it. So it's really like one big sweep. It ain't just this speed and that speed. That's it. I did a lot of research before I called them, and couldn't figure out what this was for. Looked online at the pictures. I'm like, what is this for? Got to be a reason. It's for a little plastic shield. Well, that ain't nothing. I can make that. I have plexiglass. I heat it and bend it. I'll make a shield. One problem he told me that it had, and I seen, was these. They're kind of like an accordion, and it's a cover for the back and front gibs, so when you're cutting it doesn't get on there. They're ripped up. They had the back one was really bad. The front one had one tear. So I tore it off, and I thought, you know, you could easily contact the company, order them. But you know me, I said, if I don't have to, why spend the money? I got to come. I seen this stuff before, this accordion, I call it accordion cover. I thought, I got some. Here, I went in and I got, this is for the side of an air conditioner. We just put in 2 air conditioners this summer, a new one in the house and one out here, and I built them in. But I can unscrew them around them, take them out and replace them. We don't have central air, and we didn't want it. So we have these, and I thought, look at that, that's the same stuff. So I have to take a knife and cut it on this side and cut this piece off this side, and then length, those are like 8 inches. So I'll make them about 8 inches, cut it down, and then bolt it on the same way the old ones were. It's white, it's going to get dirty looking, what do I care? I mean, I don't have to order them, I don't have to, you know, wait for them. Right there it is. So I got those two, one for the front and one for the back, it'll work. Then I don't believe he had anything here. There was a place for a bolt, and I think there's a flap, a rubber flap over this to protect this, these slides. Well, I have some rubber in the back. I can easily cut a piece and just bolt it on myself. Come down here, I got it made. But the thing, he ran it up, everything sounds good. I want to make sure, you know, I didn't hear anything in the motor. It's running good, and I have the Gibbs, the top gib, the big long plate that goes over here. I have it ready to put on and grease up. Cleaned it really good with awesome cleaner, spray cleaner from the dollar store. I love that stuff. Cleaned them really good, all the gibs and the slides and everything, and then I put new grease on because the grease was getting a little hard. And I use premium wheel bearing grease for mine. Works great. So, the motorcycles. The Suzuki, I'm going to have to wait till during the winter to work on it. Get that new tool, bring it up, see what's wrong with it. I just haven't had time. The Harley, I got all the new parts for it, and I'll be showing that in another video when I go to do it, what I bought, what I'm doing with it. It was clicking. It would go to start it, it would click at least twice, sometimes 3, 4 times, click, click, and then it would hit. When it hit, it goes. It's clicking all the time, so the solenoid's probably going in. But I said, you know what? I'm going to get a new solenoid and a starter. I got those two for $100. Well, on eBay, they had a deal where you buy those two, you get them for $100. That ain't bad. So I bought them. I had cleaned that starter, but it's 50 years old. The bike's in 1970. I bought the starter relay. There's a starter relay under the battery, electronic. I bought it. And something else. I think a new switch for the top. But the switch for the top says, from JP Cycles, says it fits this bike. But it doesn't. I mean, you got to modify it. I have that plastic I showed that you pour 2 parts, it's like epoxy, and it sets there, you mix it up real good, and all of a sudden it hits white, you know, it turns white. And I've left a piece of that. I made a little disc and laid out. That stuff is hard plastic. Fantastic. So I'm going to have to make a piece for in there, but I can go buy that one and maybe do it. It may not need it because every time I hit it, it clicks. That's working. I might let that go. But all that other stuff, instead of going one by one, which I suggest for everybody, but when you got a 50-year-old bike and some of that's never been replaced, it's time to throw some new stuff on and be done with it. Now, a guy asked me, he has a 1975 Harley, and he said he put a new battery in, a new charging system, and it's still, he goes out and he maybe starts the bike 12, 14, 16 times, then it's like the battery's dead. Well, that sounds like you have a drain, like something's draining your bike. You know, the battery going down. I suggest, like I said, putting a 12-volt tester on the battery. See, it should be above 12 volts just sitting there. You start it, it should go above 14, meaning it's putting charge back into the battery. A new battery will start that a lot of times. So, I mean, even if it isn't getting charged. So I would check that, and then I showed how in a previous video about that one that checks the cold cranking amps. You can go to it. You need one of those. Put that on there. You don't even have to start the bike. You put it on that battery and hit that and hold it, and man, I mean, it'll show if it's strong enough to start your bike. Something else you can check is, it might be the same as mine. Now, this is a 1970, his is 75. In the headlight, when I first got that bike, I always had trouble with lights not working, then a turn signal, the tail light one day wouldn't work. I'm like, what's going on? It's always in the headlight. In that particular bike, instead of like now, today, you have all the plugs that go in, or you'll have a big plug and a little plug, or another plug, a male and female, and you plug them in. You know, they even like lock together. Back then, they made a thing. It's out of the material that they make printed circuit boards out of, so it won't get any continuity through it. They had all female plugs here, no, male plugs here in the bike, in the headlight. Then a female would come up, all the wiring would plug into that. Those were always getting bad. I'd pull them wires off and take the female and squeeze real easy with pliers, put it back on. It was great. A while later, another one's loose. It's loose because you have so much vibration. And I said, that's it, I'm done with it. Done messing with it. I come out, I'll never forget it, I come out and asked Lois, I said, I want you to take these wires and hold them right here together for me. I took all them wires and all those males and females, I took cutters and cut them off, and she's looking, she goes, why'd you do that? I said, because I'm going to put a gang thing up there with screws in. You can get them at the auto parts. And I had to put about 4 of them, maybe 4 or 5 of them in there. Made my own board. I put that on there. Now I put them eyelet ends on. Put screws in them. Put a little Loctite on there. Put screws in. Never had trouble with anything. That cured that. And then another thing is, if you got a bike and you're having kind of trouble, you may want to get a new main wire for that bike. And especially right up where you're in front of the tank and the wire goes up to that headlight. You figure how many years that bike has had the steering turned. Every time you turn it, them wires move right there at that joint where the main wiring goes from the back up towards the front, from the tank especially up into the headlight. Right there where your steering goes down through. Those wires are constantly going like this when you're steering. All those years. How do I know that? Well, my machine up at work, one time they come in, they were putting new electronics in it, updating it and this and that. They were taking all the wires. There's a big track, so when you move that machine, that lathe, down, the track goes out with it and comes back. You figure how many years, and they said it was 18 years since they changed all that. 18 years, those wires are moving back and forth, back and forth. They weren't going to take a chance. They stripped them all out, put all new wires in. That's something to consider. I looked for a main wiring harness for this Harley of mine. I could get it, and it wasn't cheap. It was, I think back then it was like close to $100. And I said, you know, I wanted some wiring anyway. I should have some wiring on hand. I went over, I think Harbor Freight, and I bought a bunch of, they have the whole rolls of different wire. I bought that, then I went to the auto parts and bought some other to get the other colors I needed. I made a wiring harness for that. Laid it out by the old one, did it all, put the ends on. But one thing is, right under the seat, when that wiring, there's a place back there that has, I think, are 6 studs with wiring that goes towards the tail. It comes from the front and then goes back there and goes to your turn signals. When that wire goes down through there, it has a coating on it that's almost like the old cloth. You know how you would have like an old fan or a lamp, and they had the old-time cloth over the cord that you plugged in. It looks like that, and it's heat resistant. Here, I needed some of that, and I'm like, well, you know, it was before I needed it. I thought, I have a bag of that kind of wire back here. Here, that buddy I used to fly with, he was sometimes going to Florida. He moved to Florida, he come back, he kept doing that. He wanted to live down there, but all his friends and family's up here. So he's leaving one time. He gave me a bag. He said, here, you could probably use this. It was that kind of wiring in there with that coating on. I couldn't believe it, and I thought when I did my bike, I know I have some of that. I dug around in the back. I got it. And so he saved me there. I'd have probably tried to find where I could get some. And that's what I did with mine. So that'd be a suggestion on that. You might want to change that wiring. When you do, put the dielectric grease on all your if it goes on a screw, you're going to screw it in, plug in, whatever. Get a little bit of toothpick and get a little grease on them. That dielectric grease is the only one you can use. I had some here. You can get it at the auto parts. Some plumbing places have it. Stuck it in the grease. But here, that I got at the plumbing store. Dielectric grease. That's the only grease you want to put on the wiring. And there was another viewer has a Suzuki, and she said that she's having a little clicking sound in the back wheel. She said in the rear end, she called it, the rear end of the bike. Well, that's probably down around the wheel, and I told her to check her fluid level in that final drive right on the wheel. I told her to check the level. You take the filler plug, the one on it's on the left side of the bike, take the filler plug out, see if the oil's up to the bottom of that with the bike standing up straight. You have to get somebody to hold it or whatever you can do. See if that oil, and then even put a screwdriver in it, pull it out, see if it's real black, change it. You want to probably change it anyway. Anytime I change oil in the Suzuki, I change the rear end oil. All the more it costs. You get a big bottle of it, and you could probably change it about 4 or 5 times with that one bottle back there. Another thing is, if you have a sound like that, you want to find it. I wouldn't take the bike out and ride all day and stuff. I would find it. Another thing I told her is you can jack that back wheel up off the ground. You could put a car jack, and a front wheel and a kickstand will hold it. You can pick it up enough just to turn the wheel and listen and turn it back and forth. See if you hear any noise. If you don't, then put it back on the ground and push it forward and back and see if you hear it. You might need to wait on that wheel to find it. But if you have it up off the ground and you hear that noise, you take a broomstick handle, a dowel rod, and you lay on your hub back there, put your ear on it and turn it and listen. Then move it to the front, to the back of that hub. Move it all around and you'll pinpoint where that sound's at. You find that sound is coming from in there, take the back wheel off and look. Look for any rub marks you see. There's got to be something rubbing or something just not quite right in there. You can watch my video where I grease the front of that drive shaft. Up in the front has no grease when they put them together. Some do, some don't. And if it does have any grease on it, it's very just barely a spot. You need a little finger of grease around it. You know, you don't really load it up, just enough to cover that, because they are turning together, you know, meshing as it goes. So you want a little bit of grease on there. You could use the wheel bearing grease, would be good. Another thing, when you put that rod on that hub and listen, put it on the drive shaft that goes back. Put it back towards the hub, lay it on there, listen. Take it to the front, up as far as you can get towards the front. Put it on there and listen and turn it. You'll narrow it in. And even Harbor Freight has one of those stethoscopes you put on, and it has just a thing on the end. You lay it on there. But be careful, because that thing, if you bump it or something, man, that comes in there loud in your ears. You got to be careful you don't bang it around. But you could get that. But a dowel rod works fine. That's an old mechanics. They've been doing that for years on an engine. They hear a noise, you can put it on the top of the motor, bottom of the motor, you know, back by the transmission, and you can narrow it down, and it might help. So that's what I've been doing. This little milling machine, I'm impressed with it. You know, I thought, well, it's small. I don't have a lot of room in here. And this cost me probably half of what, well, maybe a little more than half of what a brand new one would cost. And then you figure shipping, you got $70-some because I looked extra for shipping. Then a lot of places now, if you want a truck with a gate, you know, they call it that gate in the back that lowers, they bring it out and it puts it to the ground for you, they want an extra $50 for that. Well, anytime we get anything, they didn't say anything about the refrigerator coming, so I don't know what. They probably have a lift gate. But the other time the guy called and said, do we have to have one? I said no. I took my motorcycle lift out there, put it clear up, put a board on it, and then it was just about that much of a step off his truck. And we took, when we got our furnace, and we just moved it over and set it down. It was still in the box and everything. And then, you know, he drove left, and I just lowered it down, and then I could get it on the ground, and then I have a dolly I put under it and brought it in. So you have all them costs when you buy it and tax. Now they're charging you tax when you order like eBay. That's something you got to consider. They're going to get their money. Because it was a lot of times I'd order stuff off eBay, and it even maybe come from China, you know, and I'm like, you know, well, you got shipping over there's more a little, but a lot of things in the United States, I'm like, I'm amazed they haven't come around to check, you know, say we're starting to charge tax, but now they do. So I think they charge the state you buy it from. They get the money, and there's tax on everything. This, I went over, paid him the money he wanted, and I didn't even bicker because I could see, you know, it was worth what he's asking for it. Definitely worth it. So I'm glad I got it. I want to try it out and everything, but I got to finish this up and make my covers for over the ways, everything, and then I'm going to mount it right over here on the bench. But I've really cleaned this up. I'll get the camera. I didn't use my microphone, so I'll turn the sound up when I edit it, because it's on my helmet. And I was in a rush, so I put 3M in the one box that you have to stick on your helmet. I used 3M tape. I should have used Velcro so I could take it off. I went over to get it. I remembered I was in a hurry, and I stuck it on there and had it squeezed with a clamp while I got the bike out, got everything ready, and then I rode. So the microphone's on there. I didn't want to pull it off. I left it go, so I'm doing this without a microphone. But I'll get the camera. Can't get it out of there. There. And show. This is about where I'm at. I mean, the rest of the shop's kind of bad. And I'm really getting it set up. I'm going to have the little mill there, but so many of these tools here. This little drill, and then I got holders for these gas, the regular gas and the MAP gas, hammers that I use, and up here, my Allen keys. I wanted something to put there to put my Allen keys in, and I have a metric, and I have SAE set. This is a box when you get a GoPro, that plastic box on top. I kept them. I thought they are so nice. Drilled it and put the screws in. These wrenches I use a lot. Vice grips over here. I got 2 sets of each, SAE and metric. I can put them right there. Got stuff up here that I always use. And over there is the other box for the other GoPro that I can put some drill stuff in, because I have my drill press right there. And I still got something to do, and then I'm going to have a little bit of this down here. I'm going to rearrange because I'm going to have stuff for the mini mill. But you can see I got this all greased up and lubed, and a lot of the stuff just wasn't dialed in. I don't know if he, you know, and a lot of these that you adjust, everything I adjust, and these screws down here, in here, and there's one back here holding this to pull this back and forth. That has threads in it down below. This was cockeyed, and it has a bolt right in here. I put Loctite, just a little bit, just takes a little dab, but I put Loctite on all that stuff. And I had this off. And one thing you want to watch, if you have one of these and you're going to work on it and lube it up and that, when you take this wheel off, take that outer aluminum piece with it, because if you pull that off, put a paper towel around it, because there's a spring inside of that right there. And what that allows is you can turn this aluminum thing to zero it out. That's why it's like that. But you don't want to pull that off, because that spring will take off and you might not be able to find it. And I've been cleaning everything real good as I go, and I think it'll be a nice addition. It's a pretty nice little mill. I have part of that put on there, and this is going to work perfect. Now on this, when I took it off, there's a strip like this inside here, so it's like got some firmness to it. Then this one that goes on this side has 2 screws further out. So to do it, what I did was I just simply laid it on there to get the right thing I want. These screws were up under. Well, I'm not going to do that. They're fine just like that. And I think this side over here I'm going to do the same thing. So I want to go through this part first, so when I attach it, it's like that. It'll stretch enough. And I just center this piece up and take a marker and mark it. And to put the holes through that, I found the best way to do it is with a paper punch. Now that metal piece is going to be inside here, but I got to punch this back here through 2 parts. Well, you can't punch through 2 parts of this, these 2 flaps. So I just flatten it out and I do this one first. Then I fold it together, punch the other part. And you got to squeeze it pretty good because its center punch is made for paper. But it went good. And there's the 2 holes. Perfect. Now I'll do this one, put it on, and see what it looks like. And there I have that one on. These metal strips, that is probably so that this stuff don't rip out of there. You know, this way the big bar is holding that one of these inside. This one goes for the front, but that holds that, so that's probably why the screws are up under, to hold it so this outer don't pull off. But it might work. I might take it back off and put them screws underneath. They were right on the metal, but you can see I come way out here. That does fine. And it seems to work. Didn't cost me anything. Pretty good. Just so it keeps the dirt. Rubber flap here. Put this in on the front. I could maybe even use this one. Yeah, that would be plenty, because it's just a hair shorter than this one up here. It's a little bit shorter, but it covers this. So I'll just use this. I have another one there, and I'll have it for extra. In case this pulls off, I can redo it. Very good. And then one thing I got with the mini mill is, I thought, well, I'm going to have to buy a good vise for it. But here, he had this just sitting on it. He had bought it for it. Because I have a vise over here, like a flat one for your drill press. But this has to be different. And this is one of them. And this thing is heavy. But you can see it's made for a milling machine, because in here is perfectly smooth. Like the one for the drill press has cross hatches on it, so it grabs. This one doesn't. This is supposed to just, you know, hold it good enough to mill on it. So you don't want crosshairs or cross hatch cuts on this. So that came with the mill. And that is pretty nice, but man, it's heavy. So I ain't got to buy that.